In four previous videos, I did actually five previous videos. I read through the entire Gospel of Matthew, and I also did a whole video commenting on 14 points that I thought were interesting to look at in Matthew, the mysteries of Matthew. And today I'm going to be doing 28 sayings. I was originally thinking I was going to do 14 sayings, but today I'm going to do 28 sayings in Matthew that I feel are worth just bringing to awareness and maybe talking a little bit about. Obviously, most scholars and most are in agreement that that Jesus and his disciples spoke in Aramaic. They were not very literate. The authors of the Gospels, and we don't really know who they were fairly literate, and they wrote in Greek. So and what we're reading is English. So we're like twice removed from the original. So let's keep that in mind. But by the same token, it is interesting, and important to remark upon the fact that so much of our language and culture is based on these sayings. Actually, there's so much that goes back to these sayings. That's why they're so familiar to us, because so many of them are just part of our everyday lexicon. Maybe not everyone's, but they are used to this day so much. So let me say a little bit about myself. For the few people that actually might watch this video, who am I? I have been a yogi. I've been a mystic. I have worked with plant medicine, especially ayahuasca. And I'm coming to this study of the Gospels and the Bible. Also, I lived in Israel for a couple of years, and I studied Hebrew, and I learned some Aramaic, and I also studied some Arabic, and several languages over the years. I'm by no means a scholar. We are using I was listening to Bart Ehrman, and he had something good to say about this version, which is the New Revised Standard Version, which he said is probably better than the NIV, because this version was the scholars did not have a monolithic. The scholars that worked on it did not have a monolithic viewpoint. So it's not like this one perspective on the Gospels. So what was I going to say? Yes. So I have been basically a seeker. You could say I've been knocking on the door for a long time. I'm not completely happy with what you find in scholarship in terms of the deconstruction of it all, and I'm not completely happy with the traditional viewpoint either. I would say that in general it seems that the truth is somewhere in between, and theology and dogma and also even scholarship can get in the way. And that's just a way of saying that everyone has a bias. We all have our biases. We all have our biases. I do like Dr. Ehrman. I've been watching his whole Misquoting Jesus podcast with Megan Lewis. I think it's I think he's excellent. There's a reason why he is who he is, and he's worth listening to. I don't know if he has all the answers either, but he seems to be pretty balanced, and he's done his homework, which not many people on both sides can say that they really have done. But anyway, let's talk about the 14 sayings. The biggest and most common things in Matthew is the Sermon on the Mount, right? It starts chapter 5 with the Beatitudes, It goes through 6 and 7. And we're not going to talk much about the Beatitudes, even though you might think I would quote a lot. The most quotable probably of the Beatitudes is, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." And what does that actually mean? We could go really deep into that, but we won't. The one I wanted to point out was, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." It tends to be my perspective too. I would say that that's true. And we could talk more about that, but let's leave that for right now. I just wanted to bring it in that one. Number 2, he says to his disciples, chapter 5, "You are the light of the world." Now, generally we think of Jesus as being the light of the world. He tells them, "You are the salt of the earth." That's another saying that has really gotten into our common lingo. But he also says, "You are the light of the world." All right, you are the light of the world. Chapter 5 also. I've come not to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. Now, this is a very big one. This is a very important saying. And obviously, not everything in Christianity necessarily agrees with this. I think Paul had a slightly different perspective. I don't pretend that I know enough to say, but Jesus is basically saying, not one jot or tittle of the law will pass away. Let's just read that real quickly. "Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." Very strong words. So even the least of the law, right? Like wool and linen together, not eating pork, which is not the least, but not all the laws of kashrut, all the laws of keeping kosher. One that I just heard was having a pointed beard. In Leviticus there's the whole holiness code, so you got to refer to that to see a lot of the laws are right there, right? And not having a tattoo and not getting a tattoo and all that other stuff. According to Jewish law, if you get a tattoo, you can't be buried in a Jewish cemetery. So that's one that needs a whole a library of books written about it. I'm sure there is a library of books written about that one. 5:27, "Everyone that looks at a woman with lust." So there's the antitheses. These are called the antitheses, where Jesus says, "You have heard, but I say to you." You have heard that and mainly he's quoting the 10 Commandments here on the sermon, the Sermon on the Mount still. And he says, "You have heard that, you shall not murder. But I say to you that if you are angry with a brother or sister, you will be liable to judgment," etc., right? This one on adultery, this is the one I wanted to point out, is, "You have heard that it was said you should not commit adultery, but I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart." There's a very, very high bar for discipleship. Not many, but according to the standard of what Jesus is saying, there aren't many true Christians. And I think Bernard Shaw once said something like, "The last true Christian died on the cross." How many real Christians have there ever been? And on that note, I want to mention a man who's amazingly still alive. One of the oldest presidents ever, Jimmy Carter, once said in a Playboy interview that he was asked about, I forget what it was, but he said, "I have lust in my heart," and he said, and God forgives me for that, and that's all part of the plan. That I know that I have lust in my heart. And that was a big thing for a president to admit. And this was back in I believe in the 70s that he said that, or maybe the early 80s. I forget when that interview came out. Might have been one of the things that prevented him from getting reelected. Do not swear at all. Jesus says a little bit later. He tells his disciples, "Do not swear. Don't make any vows or oaths." That was just one I wanted to point out. We're not going to go into it. 538. Let me just say that at one point I took a vow to never swear, but the swearing was never to use a curse word. That was when I was, for a long time, I committed to not using, to really watching my words and not using any shits or fucks. But I'm over that now. But it was a good practice for me. Concerning retaliations, 538, you have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist an evildoer, but if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your coat, give your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go also the 2nd mile. Give to everyone who begs from you, and do not refuse anyone who wants to borrow from you. Holy shit. No one can do this. This is impossible. No, I'm sure there have been some that have risen to the occasion and took Jesus up on all this. We have certain things that we say, walking the 2nd mile, going the extra mile. Actually, going the extra mile with someone comes from this, and turning the other cheek. Obviously, that's it's amazing. It's an amazing saying. It's one for the books. But Jesus sometimes he seems to contradict that in many ways in how like he curses a fig tree, and he wishes he says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees," and some will burn in hell, and some will be there'll be a great gnashing of teeth. What is the saying? We'll get to it. I'm gonna mention in a moment. 543. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. That's one. That to this day is a big one in Christendom. Is loving your enemies and praying for those who persecute you. And obviously, we know that the Christians were persecuted. How much they were persecuted, who really knows? There's some records apparently, but it might not have been as horrible as we might think. But obviously they were being, if the gospel writers were including that, then they were already being persecuted, right? Unless you believe that this was all written early on, which some people do. Most scholars don't. Most scholars believe that Matthew was written sometime in the 80s, well after the temple was destroyed, and well after Paul, and well after the movement was really already going strong. You cannot serve God and mammon. You cannot serve God and money, right? 624. You cannot serve two masters. No one can serve two masters, for a slave will either hate the one and love the other, or be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth. And there's this is also, like the camel through the eye of the needle. It's be easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter heaven. Jesus seems to be really down on wealth. He seems to be, my disciples will not be seeking riches at all. And that has also, to this day, people, whether you're Christian or not, people look down on people who are spiritual, who are making money, we do have that in our consciousness. It's kind of like, it's almost like an archetype. It's like, if you are spiritual, you should not be living large. And then there's the, in the Christian world today, there's the prosperity gospel where people say, no, you can be wealthy and serve Christ as well. And it's an interesting, it's a very big topic. So consider the lilies of the field. This is Jesus' way of saying, do not worry. 6:25. Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air. Consider the lilies of the field. They neither toil nor spin. Why are you so wrapped up in material things and worrying about all these things, your body even? Everything will be taken care of. Don't worry. It's a great one. There's something to this. I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just saying, you can't deny this, and you can't, but you also, let's question it as well. But you can't deny the power of all of this, right? Judge not, lest ye be judged. 7:1. Do not judge, so that you may not be judged. For with the judgment you make, you will be judged, and the measure you give will be the measure you get. Why do you see the speck in your neighbor's eye, but do not notice the log in your own eye? By the way, this I forgot to delete, so that we might get cut off at a certain point, and we'll just leave it. If we do get cut off, this will be either the 14 sayings or the 28 sayings. So I've heard people say, once you take the log out of your own eye, then you can judge others. You can judge with righteous judgment, as it says in John. Jesus says that in John. I don't completely agree. Judge not, lest ye be judged. I think Jesus is saying, he seems to be saying, do not judge. How can you judge? Who are you to judge? But that's that's an open question. So let's leave it at that. Seek and you shall find. Ask, search, knock. Ask and it will be given you. Search and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened for you. For everyone who asks receives, and everyone who searches finds, and for everyone who knocks the door will be opened. Okay, we'll leave it at that. That's, seek and ye shall find. 12, the golden rule. In everything, do to others as you would have them do to you, for this is the law and the prophets. So Jesus is saying this is the whole law. And there is a saying in the somewhere in the Talmud, I believe, where a non-Jew asked Rabbi Hillel, "Teach me the whole Torah while standing on one foot," meaning, give me the short encapsulation of the whole Torah. And Rabbi Hillel says, "What is hateful to you, do not do to others." So he formulates it in the negative sense, whereas Jesus does it in the positive. He says, do unto others as you would have them do to you. Whereas Hillel said, do not do what is hateful to yourself to others. And there's a difference between the two, which we won't go into right now. But just the fact that Jesus said that. All right. So 7:13, the straight and narrow, enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the road is easy that leads to destruction, and there are many who take it. For the gate is narrow and the road is hard that leads to life, and there are few who find it. This is also in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says the same thing, exact same thing, basically. He says, many are deluded by material pleasures. They're seeking sense gratification, material gratification, and very few actually take the path less traveled, which is the path to liberation. And Jesus seems to be saying that too. The narrow road less traveled, the straight and narrow, as we say. By their fruits ye shall know them. 7:15. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You know them by their fruits. Are grapes gathered from thorns or figs? Okay, so by their fruits you shall know a true teacher. On that note, the Dalai Lama has been called a wolf in sheep clothing by the Chinese. Chinese government calls him that. And I'm sure other people feel he's that. But from my perspective, the Dalai Lama has said, and he's an amazing person, and he's said some brilliant things. One of my favorite sayings by him is, "Love is the absence of judgment." Love is the absence of judgment. But you can also say with him, hey, if he had really defeated the Chinese, and if his people had been able to stay in Tibet, and they had sovereignty and all that stuff, then he would be a true leader. But he's not. He went into exile, and he got out. And even his own people, some of his own people don't like him, and all these other things. But so that's a tough one. How can you judge? How can you judge? Build your house upon a rock, right? Don't build it on the sand. Peter, Pedro, build it on a solid foundation. And so, Jesus' main disciple, it seems, was Peter, who he also said, Jesus, you are the Messiah, the Son of God. But then Jesus said, get behind me, Satan. It's a whole nother subject, but all connected. At one point, Jesus says, I desire mercy and not sacrifice. And that is actually from Hosea 6:6. I looked it up. And Jesus, I believe Jesus mentions that more than once in the Gospels. I desire mercy and not sacrifice. Some of the things that you hear a lot in the Gospels, often repeated, in this Gospel too, ye of little faith, right? He says that to his apostles, to his disciples. There's going to be a lot of weeping and gnashing of teeth. That's also from the Old Testament. You brood of vipers. Those with eyes to see will see, and those with ears to hear listen. Those get repeated a lot. So I just wrote those down. 8:18. It's a great saying. Now when Jesus saw great crowds around him, he gave orders to go over to the other side. The scribe then approached and said, Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go. And Jesus said to him, Foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. And then he says, let the dead bury the dead. The Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Be as wise, he tells his disciples, be as wise as serpents and as innocent as doves. Coming persecution, this is in chapter 10. See, I'm sending you out like sheep into the midst of wolves. He says this again. I'm sending you out like sheep into the midst of wolves. So be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. You will be persecuted for my sake, for my name. Be as wise as serpents and as innocent as doves. That's also in the Gospel of Thomas. I don't think that is in Mark. That's not in Mark. It might be in Luke. It's going to be interesting to see. Am I still talking? Yes, I am. Okay. The one who endures to the end will be saved. It's a great one. He says that. The one who endures to the end will be saved. It seems to be saying it's not by faith alone. You actually have to do something, right? Faith works, right? Faith and works together. You can't just have one or the other, right? There has to be both. And you have to endure, and you have to see it through. And it's not, it's the path of the straight and narrow, and few get there, right? There are few that really make it all the way. I came not to bring peace, but a sword. Now, that is not to say that Jesus is actually bringing a sword himself. Although you could read it that way. 10:34. This is 10:34. Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and one's foes will be members of one's own household. whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me, etc., etc. We could really go into this, but Jesus is obviously he's the first cult leader, or he's the prototypical cult leader. He's like, nope, gotta get cut off from your family. There's gonna be division, and I'm the cause of it, because I'm taking you with me on this journey, right? Taking you all with me. And your family is not going to approve, and prophet is not without honor except in his own hometown. So this is a big one. We could talk a lot about that one. My yoke is easy. My yoke is easy. He says, come to me. I believe this is the Statue of Liberty too. Come to me, all you that are weary and are carrying heavy burdens. This is the end of chapter 11. And I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. It's a beautiful saying. I am gentle and humble in heart. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. My yoga is easy. My yoke is my discipline. My discipline is easy. What I'm asking you to do is easy. It seems not to be, actually. So there's something there that needs to be looked at, actually. Faith the size. If you had but faith the size of a mustard seed, you could say to the mountain, move away, and it would move away. This is chapter 17 now. I tell you, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. So all you need is a little faith, just a little bit of faith. that may be connected to the my yoke is easy, right? All you need is a little faith, not a lot of faith. One of my favorites. Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? This is chapter 18. He called a child whom he put among them and said, truly I tell you, unless you change and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever becomes humble like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. It's a beautiful saying. It's a beautiful teaching. And become as a little child. To this day we say that. And all of us who really have a heart to see it know that children are our greatest teachers. So there's so much, we're coming to the end of this. There's so much here that is like so wonderful, and such high teachings. 1913. Again, in this chapter, Jesus blesses little children. He says, then little children were being brought to him in order that they might lay his hands on them and pray. The disciples spoke sternly to those who brought them, but Jesus said, let the little children come to me. Suffer the little children to come to me, and do not stop them, for it is to such as these that the kingdom of heaven belongs. And he laid his hands on them and went on his way. Wow. When 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, 18:20. Truly, I tell you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. That's a great saying too, is that whatever you let go of here, whatever you free here, will bring you that much closer to heaven. Whatever, in terms of the spirit, when you do the spiritual work, it'll help you here as well on this earth. Again, truly I tell you, if 2 of you agree on earth about anything you ask, will be done for you by my Father in heaven. For where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there among them. Right? This is to this day often quoted. Where 2 or more are gathered in my name. I already mentioned the camel. And let's just end with God, all things are possible. So as I was saying, why are we doing this? Well, can just highlight this is great wisdom. I don't think that all of the gospel. I think the gospels are kind of a mixed bag, just like the Bible is a mixed bag, because sometimes you have great things being said, and then you have other things that you kind of scratch your head about, and you wonder, is this the same, coming from the same person? Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, and cursing the fig tree, and I came not to bring peace but a sword. There will be great weeping and gnashing of teeth, etc., etc. But then there's I am gentle, and my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. So anyway, lots of questions. That's why, I see now the value of scholarship, because scholarship aims to look at everything, to try to just understand what was being said here, and who this guy was, and what his sources were. How much was he taking from the Hebrew Bible? How much did he know of it? How much was the author's input into this versus what Jesus actually taught, which is a mystery that I don't think anyone is ever gonna, anytime soon at least, is gonna figure out. So anyway, thank you for listening, and we're gonna do the Gospel of Luke next, and go through a bunch of the New Testament writings, including the letters of Paul. Thank you.